it's not so much a talk about constitutions, but it's because we are thinking, we're seeing moves to change the constitution. So it's high time that we go and look back. There are there are people who are taking law who are here. Sorry, you will be disappointed. You will be disappointed because it's not a legal constitutional history lecture. If there's anyone who can give it, it's Mr. Justice Ascuna here, who was born in the last century, and true. And he was on the Constitutional Commission for 1971 and 86. So if there's anyone with living memory of the past two constitutions, it's him. Anyway, so today we talk about, and I'm sorry, for most of the people who are used to my talks, it's usually nice and funny and light. Today we will talk about Apolinario Mabini, who doesn't lend himself to humor. He doesn't smile a lot, he cannot walk. But you should see what the founding fathers were like from his eyes. And I just want to focus on him and how he objected to the Malolos Constitution. Okay. In 1998, I produced a 100-day column on the Philippine Revolution, which was published by the Inquirer every day on page 1. And at the end of the 100 days, the editor-in-chief, the late Letty Magsanok, sat me down and said, "Why do you have such a negative view of the past?" And I said, "I'm not being negative, that's exactly what the documents are telling me." And then she says, "No, you're still negative." And so for that, then I said, okay, next year we'll do something. So in 1999, we published a 100-day column, which was all about achievements in Philippine arts and culture. So it was a feel-good thing. So there was no negative thing there, just to prove that I didn't have a negative view of the past. But I realize now that I think about it, my areas really Rizal and the Philippine Revolution, I realize that the story of the nation is not neat. If you will actually study it and go beyond your textbooks, you will see that, as I keep telling my students, if you ask teachers to describe what history is like, it's complicated, and more complicated than that. So today also, if you have the time, I hope you can go. Today is really advertisement time. No? We had Ayala Museum till midnight last night, but please go upstairs also to the diorama and try our virtual reality things, because the Ayala Museum has upstairs, they had 60 scenes from Philippine history, which were created again in the last century. And when this new building was set up, my recommendation was to throw away all the dioramas because they bored me to death when I was in school. So I said, we don't have to torment a new generation of students with it. But to my great surprise, my students who, I don't know, maybe they're just making sip-sip to get a high grade, but whenever they write, they were very appreciative of the dioramas. And I think they were appreciative because they were college students, so they came in with some background and they could tell what was happening. Now, in order for us to make the dioramas live, we tried many things. We tried to put annotations on the walls. We had an audio guide, so you could press the number and then a dramatization of the diorama would come out. But its latest incarnation is the virtual reality. So there are two episodes. The first one, you will see the execution of Rizal, complete with blood spurting, which I like. But people say that we should have a parental guidance rating for that. No? So I brought my father to see it. He's 93 years old, he wore it, and I just watched to see when he gets shot. No? So he was very impressed. The second series, we're doing 3 or 4 concerns, so we had Rizal already. So next we're doing Aguinaldo and Bonifacio, the two heroes we like to make sabong together. And it's a story also that has to be told. We we did, our original plan was to do it like a game, computer game, where there would be two characters you can follow. So you can follow Team Bonifacio and you can follow Team Aguinaldo. And in the end, what you will see is these are two different men with two different methods, but they had one objective, which was freedom for the country and birth of the nation. So one died in the process, the other one lived to be hated by everyone else. The thing there is you see two men with different personalities and yet giving us the gift of the nation. So we have a small trailer here which tells you about what the story is all about.
We need to put an end to space cruelty to our people. This is a sign of their oppression. Don't leave freedom! Don't leave the poor! Don't leave on the death!
We need a lawyer for the position.
The story begins with the tearing of the cedulas, and it actually ends in the June 12 Declaration of Independence. In the resulting, when you watch it, we pose some questions. And it's a final exam question I always ask my students. It's that if we were able to put Rizal in a time machine and you let him get stuck in EDSA traffic or get stuck in the MRT, and you will ask Rizal, was it worth dying in Bagumbayan? Or would you have changed your mind? No? And if I were him, I would change my mind. Rizal being Rizal, I think he would still do what he had to do to give us the nation. So that was the question, what would you do? Or would you have done it the same or different way? For the Bonifacio and Aguinaldo, we had a different kind of question. It was, what happens really to these two men? And when you look at the story, you realize that history is not black and white. It's really colored, and it is more complicated than we think. So I hope that after this lecture, you will go and rethink what you are taught in school. And that's what I will run through before we do the Constitution. Andres Bonifacio, unfortunately played by Robin Padilla, who cannot remove that he is Robin Padilla. So he can play anyone, but it's always Robin Padilla. They made a very nice film, but it is a textbook film. It gives us the story that we know about in textbooks. And we know that he started the revolution and that he died in the end. But how he died is the question that you are not told. And it is the question that I hope to begin with so that you get into the groove. We will start with Tejeros in 1897. It is the place where they met to form a new republic. If you go to Cavite today, it was an old church house which is now gone. So we only have the basement of it. So they marked it, and if you go there, you will see a historical marker. And you know, in one other time of my life, I put up these markers, which are meant to remind people about the past, but nobody remembers because nobody reads them. So go and read them, and it gives you the basic story. A revolutionary assembly was held March 22, 1897 in Tejeros, and then what we had was an election. And because of the election, Emilio Aguinaldo was elected president. Andres Bonifacio obviously felt he should be president, but he kept quiet. until he was elected Director of the Interior, and we don't know what exactly that is, so he accepted it, but somebody questioned his election. And he reminded people that before we started the election, we agreed that whoever is elected, no matter what his station in life is, his educational background, whoever is elected will be accepted. And you said yes. And somebody says, no, it cannot be you because you didn't finish college, there's a lawyer here, we should get someone else. And the guy who raised it was Daniel Tirona. So Bonifacio pulls out the gun, as you have seen, makes a few bad words like Duterte, and he walks out. This is the story that we learned in school, that Bonifacio is a hothead. What you are not told is that there were suggestions that there was cheating in the elections, that ballots already had their names on it, that the counting was not correct, or that people were campaigning even during the elections. When you think about it, there's nothing new. We'll do that in the next election. But the point that you should remember is, even the suggestion, even if it's not true, but just the hint that our founding fathers cheated in the first election, that is something that you will never be taught in school. And I think that is the reason why we have never changed, because we don't know the truth and we cannot change from it. We will perpetually live that mistake. So, when you think about it, what really happened there? You are not told also, because textbooks are so short, you're only told about the election. What you are not told is that the meeting was not an election. The meeting was supposed to get the Magdiwang, which was Bonifacio's group, and the Magdalo, which was Aguinaldo's group, who were not on good terms, to get these two factions of the Katipunan to talk, and if they can't be friends, at least they can fight together against a common enemy. But when Bonifacio got there, they said, let's not talk about that. Why don't we just let's dissolve the Katipunan and establish a new government. And of course, Bonifacio, being the head of the Katipunan, probably presumed he would win. And to his great disappointment, he did not. So that was the problem. Now, when you see this, you will see that Emilio Aguinaldo was president, Mariano Trias vice president, Ricarte captain general, Riego de Dios director of war, and Andres Bonifacio director of the interior. And then you see the last line. It says, certain events arising in the convention caused Bonifacio to bolt its action. What are the certain events? Nobody tells you. Nobody tells you about the cheating. But it was only recently when sometimes it really pays not just to type, but to write things out. And I wrote out the names and the positions that were conferred in Tejeros. And if you look at that, this is what you will see. So you have the names, but if you put their affiliation, you will see that only, because they say Aguinaldo cheated. Aguinaldo was not even in Tejeros. But you will see that there was only one Magdalo who won, and it was Aguinaldo. And if you will look at everyone else who won, they were Magdiwang. So these were the people of Andres Bonifacio. They controlled the assembly. So what is very clear from here is that Bonifacio was betrayed by his own people. So in Tagalog, nilaglag nila si Bonifacio. That's exactly what, but that's not the way that we are taught. So we have been taught to hate Emilio Aguinaldo all the time, but what you see here is that there is a different story, a different narrative that has not yet gone to the surface. So, he does not agree to the revolutionary government, founds his own. One has to give in. Unfortunately, they had to kill him to maintain the unity. So, he was betrayed by his own men in Tejeros, and worse, when they killed him, we don't have a problem with Rizal. Rizal is killed by the enemy, but Bonifacio was killed by his countrymen. He was killed by fellow Katipuneros. So how do we tell our children and our children's children that this is what happened? So this does not come out. They just say, tried for treason, he dies. So, The lesson that you should learn is that Bonifacio was swallowed by the very revolution he started. Nice, you start it, but in the end, you are killed by it. It is a lesson that we should learn. So next time you plan a revolution, make sure you will not be swallowed up. So, what do we remember and how do we remember are things that we have to think about. In the United States, the U.S. National Archives building is built like a Greek temple. One, because it is grand. And unfortunately for the Philippines, we do not have grand spaces. The closest you will have to this is probably the Manila Post Office or the National Museum. It's a grand space which is built to a certain scale that when you enter, you are very small. So that it gives you a sense of being human and yet being smaller than something greater than you. When you enter this Greek temple, in the central rotunda are the charters of freedom of the United States. So under bulletproof glass are the original documents, the founding documents of the United States of America. So you have the Declaration of Independence, 1776, which you can see. And there comes this wonderful quote about the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The text is in that faded manuscript. You have the Constitution of 1787 that begins with that wonderfully written, "We the people of the United States." And in this Constitution, they had a Bill of Rights. And all constitutions have Bill of Rights because human rights and bills of rights are placed there to protect us from the state. The state is not always our friend. So it's always there, to protect the weak from the strong. And that comes from the French Revolution. This is from the Carnavalet Museum in Paris. It's the rights of man. But what people also do not remember is that Jose Rizal actually translated from the French ang Karapatan ng Tao, which is a text that most people don't read about, which shows you that Rizal was also reading stuff on the Philippine Revolution. So, if the U.S. has the papers, the charters of its freedom, where is ours? We have the printed Constitution. It's very small. It's this big. Printed in 1899 in Malolos. But the big question is, where is the manuscript? We don't know where it is. It's probably in the National Library. If it is, we don't know. It is not displayed. It does not remind us. It does not inspire us. So we need a place to see these bits and pieces of paper. The 1935 Constitution was placed in this beautiful gilt box. It's like the Ark of the Covenant. You put it there and they carry it. And this is now in the Quezon Memorial Museum in Quezon City. But the Constitution is gone and the government had to buy a handwritten copy. So, if we are to go historically, they only count from independence of June 12, 1898, and we count 5 constitutions. We have Malolos, we have the 1935 Commonwealth Constitution, which they call the Roosevelt Constitution because he signed it. We have 1943, which was the Laurel Japanese period Constitution. 73 is the Marcos Constitution. 87 is, we would probably say, is the Cory Constitution. So when you look at it, this is Malolos in 1899, colorized, of course. We don't really know if they look like that or the colors were as nice as that, but it gives us an idea of the place where the Constitution, our first Constitution, was born. The 1935 one was headed by Claro M. Recto, and I don't know how many copies they made. I've seen 4. With all the delegates signing. It probably took them days just to sign all of this. But we actually have a photograph of the young Manuel Rojas signing the document. And you see he's using not a ball pen, but a quill. Very, very hard to write with that. And the original one, so you see all the names, and you see, where is Manuel Rojas? Here. Manuel Rojas. And then you see all the delegates from different, and people signing with some very complicated signatures like they're the King of England. No? So the bigger it is, the better. No? And the more squiggly it is, the better. So it's hard to copy. The Constitution, when finished, had to be approved by the President of the United States. So they brought it to Washington, and this is Franklin Roosevelt signing it. And I just found last night a very clear film clip of this, which I wanted to see, because it's the closest to seeing history alive.
For 11 years, the Philippines will govern themselves under
And we
American
don't know who
sovereignty,
this
and that will
photo
have to
bomber
be
is.
independent.
Pero, see all the pictures.
Represented at the ceremony
See,
by Manuel
guwapo ni
Quezon,
Quezon.
Philippine independence leader.
Oh, yeah.
Under the Chinese McCarthy Independence Act, conform to the provisions of the act.
Diba? Tumitingin pa sa camera.
Congratulated on the satisfactory completion of a task so important and so significant in the life of their people. In the event of ratification of this Constitution, the authority granted to the Commonwealth government will permit exercise by the Filipino people of general control, subject only to a few important exceptions of their local affairs. So, Senor Quezon, I congratulate you.
Dapat talaga burahin siya, no? I have to research who that guy is. But anyway, 1943 Constitution was not ratified by the people, so there were people called the Kalibapi. So anyway, the war did not stay very long, so this does not really count. Then there was